Black waitress pays for a veteran's meal. The next day, tanks roll up to a restaurant. Imagine waking up to find a line of massive tanks rolling down your quiet neighborhood street, engines rumbling like distant thunder, and metal treads grinding over cracked asphalt. Picture the awe and shock on people's faces, phone cameras snapping desperately to capture the most unbelievable sight in Maplewood history. Why would the U.S. Army roll heavy artillery into a small family restaurant? And how does one waitress, an ordinary woman just trying to do her job, end up at the center of it all? Buckle up, because this extraordinary journey begins with one small act of kindness and escalates into something no one could have predicted. Kendra Jackson woke up to the soft buzz of her phone alarm in her modest apartment, just off Maplewood's main street. She sighed, letting the morning sun warm her face through the thin curtains. It was 6 a.m., and in 2 hours she needed to be at Maplewood Diner for her usual shift. Kendra glanced around her room. A small bookshelf displayed a few cherished items, her worn copy of Maya Angelou's I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, a photograph of her grandmother in a bright Sunday dress, and a single red rose preserved from her high school graduation. These were small tokens of the life she had built, humble yet full of hope. The Maplewood Diner was not glamorous. Its walls were decorated with sticky notes, flyers from local businesses, and old black and white photographs of Maplewood from decades past. But it was a pillar of the community. Folks came in after Sunday church, after Friday night football games, and whenever they needed a warm meal. Kendra had worked there for nearly 3 years. She was one of the first African-American waitresses to be hired, initially an experiment in diversity, as the manager, Harriet Ellis, liked to call it. Over time, Kendra had proven her mettle. Her quick smile, easygoing charm, and tireless work ethic earned her the respect, if sometimes grudgingly, of many regulars. The job wasn't perfect, but it put food on her own table, helped cover her mother's medical bills, and gave her a sense of pride every single day. On this particular morning, a subtle tension nagged at Kendra. She couldn't put her finger on why. Perhaps it was simply that heavy, humid air that often hung over Maplewood in late spring. Or maybe it was the argument she'd had with her mother the night before about finances. After all, Kendra was supporting not only herself but chipping in for her mother's medication. The bills kept piling up. She shoved the anxious thoughts away, determined to start the day with a clean slate. Today was going to be a good day. Somehow she just knew it. The diner buzzed with a typical Monday crowd. Construction workers in neon vests lined the lunch counter, sipping coffee and cracking jokes. Retirees with nowhere else to be sat in the corner, reading the local newspaper, the Maplewood Gazette. A couple of teenage girls giggled in a booth near the jukebox, sharing a plate of fries. Kendra worked her section with a quiet efficiency, balancing trays, refilling cups, and offering a kind word to anyone who looked like they needed one. She had just finished dropping off a check at table 5 when she noticed an older man shuffle in, wearing a faded Vietnam veteran ball cap. He moved slowly, as though every step required effort. His boots were worn, his green jacket frayed at the cuffs. Harriet, the diner's manager, shot him a suspicious look as he chose a booth by the window. Harriet often worried about drifters occupying space without ordering much, but Kendra, noticing the man's tired eyes and stooped shoulders, quickly told Harriet she'd handle it. She approached him with her best smile. "Good morning, sir," she said, setting a glass of water on the table. "Would you like to see a menu?" He looked up, his face creased by age and what seemed like hidden sorrow. "Yes, please, coffee too, black." Kendra nodded and handed him a menu. "Coming right up." As she poured his coffee, she couldn't help but notice he didn't glance at the rest of the menu. She'd seen this look before, a desperation, a knowledge that a meal might be out of reach if it cost too much. Instinctively, she wanted to help. She had been that hungry once, rummaging for change to buy a burger in her college days. She knew how it felt to be scraping by. Harriet had once told Kendra that giving away free meals cut into profits, so they had to be careful. Still, Harriet never objected to the occasional minor discount for a struggling customer, as long as it was discreet. Kendra returned with the coffee and started to walk away, but the man's voice brought her back. "Miss, do you—" he started, then paused, his cheeks coloring in shame. "Do you offer any veteran discounts?" Kendra smiled gently. "We don't have an official discount, but I'll see what I can do." She left him to look over the menu, determined to figure something out. Maybe she could talk Harriet into letting him have a reduced price. Maybe Kendra would just cover it herself. She glanced into the kitchen, where the owner, an older gentleman named Mr. Leroy, was busy preparing pancakes. Maybe he'd understand. Her mind was swimming with possibilities when the next wave of customers strolled in. The morning rush eventually waned, and the old veteran still hadn't placed an order. He sipped his coffee slowly, almost reverently. Kendra dropped by with a refill. "Have you decided?" she asked gently. He stared at the menu as though it were a complicated puzzle. "Could I get just a short stack of pancakes, please?" She wrote it down. Of course. When she relayed the order to Harriet, the manager's eyebrows shot up. "He's been sitting there for over an hour, Kendra. Are you sure he can pay?" Kendra glanced back at the booth, where the man sat hunched over, staring out the window at nothing. "It's fine. Put it on my tab if he can't." Harriet frowned. "I won't make a habit of this," she said, but didn't protest further. A short while later, Kendra served the man his pancakes. He thanked her quietly and she gave him a small nod, trying to offer reassurance without making him feel pitied. Once he finished his meal, he waved her over. "You've been very kind," he said, voice shaky. "Could you bring me the check?" She did. He dug into his jacket pocket for change, producing some coins and a worn $5 bill. He counted them carefully. The lines on his forehead deepened. Kendra discreetly touched his arm. "Don't worry about it," she whispered. "I've got it covered." He looked up, tears gathering in his watery blue eyes. "I don't want to be a burden." "You aren't," she said. "My father served too. It's the least I can do." His hand closed over hers in thanks. "God bless you, young lady." He introduced himself as James Hawkins, though Kendra would still think of him as Sir. Before he left, he insisted on scrawling his address on a napkin, a battered P.O. box in a nearby rural area, and told her, "If you ever need anything, you let me know. I might not have much, but I'll do what I can." Kendra smiled and tucked the napkin into her apron. "Thank you, Mr. Hawkins. You take care." He left, shuffling out the door. Kendra returned to her duties, never imagining that this small kindness would reshape her entire future. If anything, she was content with having shown compassion to a man who served the nation, who needed a little help. Word traveled fast in Maplewood. By the time the lunch shift started, a few regulars were already talking about how Kendra gave a free meal to some vagrant. A couple of them, men who sat by the counter and read tabloids, shook their heads in disapproval. Another longtime regular, an elderly lady named Mrs. Barnsworth, came over to Kendra with a tight-lipped smile. "I heard you gave away a meal today," she remarked, her tone neither condemning nor approving. "Was that to that old soldier I saw leaving?" Kendra felt a flicker of defensiveness. "Yes, ma'am. He served in Vietnam. He looked like he needed a little help." Mrs. Barnsworth patted Kendra's arm. "I'm sure the good Lord saw your kindness." She slipped a few extra dollars into Kendra's tip jar. "That's for you." Touched, Kendra thanked her. But Harriet's disapproving stare from across the diner reminded her that not everyone would see it that way. Harriet might not have minded Kendra covering the cost this time, but there was an unspoken rule about how often acts of charity should occur on the diner's premises, lest it develop a reputation. Maplewood was small, and every rumor could spread like wildfire. After the lunch rush, Harriet cornered Kendra near the coffee machine. "Listen, I don't want to discourage kindness," she began, her tone surprisingly gentle. "But we can't have you doing that too often. We'll become a free soup kitchen if you do." Kendra swallowed her frustration. "Harriet, it's not a problem. I only helped one man. I won't make it a habit." Harriet nodded stiffly and patted Kendra's shoulder. "You have a good heart, Kendra. Just watch out for yourself." Kendra offered a half smile, though a pang of resentment stirred within her. People needed help, but she understood Harriet's perspective. Business is business. Maplewood Diner had to keep its doors open. Kendra went back to work, pushing down the uneasy feeling that tomorrow might bring more complications. It was Tuesday. Kendra arrived at the diner early to set up. The sun had barely climbed above the horizon, its rays turning Maplewood's old brick buildings a warm shade of gold. She took her usual path along Main Street, humming softly. When she reached the diner, she paused at the front door, rummaging in her purse for the key Harriet had given her for early shifts. As she opened the door and flipped on the lights, she was met by the usual hum of refrigerators, the faint smell of old coffee grounds, and the hush before the day's chaos. Yet something felt off. An hour later, Harriet arrived, just as puzzled by the tension in the air. Soon after, the first regulars filtered in. Kendra took their orders as usual, but she noticed them glancing out the windows, a mixture of confusion and, was that fear, etched on their faces. It wasn't until 9 a.m. that Kendra realized what was causing the stir. The roar of heavy machinery rattled the diner's windows. People craned their necks to see what was happening outside. A line of military vehicles rolled down Main Street, and they weren't just trucks or jeeps. These were tanks, massive Abrams tanks from the nearby Fort Benning, about 2 hours away from Maplewood. The rumble of their engines was deafening, sending vibrations through the diner's stools. Patrons stared, half risen from their seats, as if witnessing a parade that no one had announced. Kendra's heart pounded. Why on earth were tanks headed to Maplewood, let alone the diner? She noticed Harriet rushing to the window, pressing her nose against the glass. By the time half the staff had gathered to watch, the lead tank slowed down. Its turret swiveled, coming to a stop right in front of Maplewood Diner. Harriet let out a small gasp. What in the world is going on? Without warning, a uniformed officer stepped out of a second vehicle trailing the tanks. A sleek, dark SUV with military plates. The officer scanned the building's facade, then marched right up to the diner's entrance, pushing through the door, bell jingling overhead. Everyone in the diner fell silent. "Which of you is Kendra Jackson?" the officer asked. His voice was firm but courteous, with a distinct southern drawl. Kendra's mouth went dry. She raised her hand tentatively. She could feel every pair of eyes in the diner lock onto her. Harriet glanced at Kendra, panic flickering in her eyes. The officer, whose name tag read Captain Reardon, offered a respectful nod. "Ma'am, we need you to come outside for a moment. There's someone who'd like to speak with you." Confusion roiled in Kendra's mind. She shot Harriet a questioning look, then carefully set down the coffee pot she'd been clutching and approached Captain Reardon. He gestured politely for her to follow him. The diner's door closed behind them, cutting off the hushed buzz of the patrons inside. Stepping onto the sidewalk felt surreal. The sunlight glinted off the hulls of 3 large Abrams tanks, parked in front of Maplewood Diner as though they'd rolled in for breakfast. Soldiers milled about, some in conversation, others guarding the perimeter. A few Maplewood locals had gathered on the sidewalk across the street, snapping pictures and whispering in shock. This was definitely not normal for their quiet little town. Captain Reardon guided Kendra toward the SUV. As they approached, she noticed a figure stepping out, older, dignified, clad in an army combat uniform. His rank insignia indicated he was a major general. The silver stars on his shoulders shone in the sunlight, and Kendra felt her stomach clench. This was serious. The general gave her a solemn nod. "Are you Miss Kendra Jackson?" Kendra managed a quiet, "Yes, sir," though her heart hammered like a drum. She had no idea what she might have done to bring such attention. Was this about Mr. Hawkins? Had something happened to him? "I'm Major General Thornton. I command a division at Fort Benning," he began, his voice resonant, his posture straight as a board. "I'm here in Maplewood because of something that happened yesterday." Kendra's pulse quickened. "Sir, is everything all right?" The general's eyes flicked with a hint of warmth. We have reason to believe you extended kindness to a particular veteran, James Hawkins. He's an old friend, practically family to me. He served under my father in Vietnam, and when I found out about your act of generosity, I was deeply moved." Kendra blinked. The full weight of the previous day's encounter hit her. Mr. Hawkins knew a major general? "Mr. Hawkins told me how you paid for his meal. He said he tried to refuse, but you insisted," Thornton continued. "Now, Mr. Hawkins is a proud man, and he's had a rough go of it recently, but he didn't want you to think that your kindness went unnoticed. I happened to be in the area for a training exercise, and I wanted to come here personally to thank you for what you did." Kendra's lips parted in disbelief. She suddenly felt self-conscious standing in her diner uniform, apron wrinkled, old tennis shoes scuffed. This was all because she covered someone's breakfast? I just thought he needed it more than I did, sir," she said softly. "That's all." A faint smile touched the general's stern face. "Such humility is rare. We brought a few of our vehicles here, a bit dramatic, I admit, to make a statement, to show we don't forget those who treat our veterans with dignity and compassion." He paused, glancing at the restaurant behind her. "I hope we haven't caused too much of a disturbance." Kendra couldn't hold back a nervous laugh. A line of tanks outside Maplewood Diner is definitely a sight. General Thornton let out a small chuckle. "Yes, I imagine so. We also have something else for you." He nodded toward Captain Reardon, who reached into the SUV and pulled out a folded American flag. Kendra's hands shook as she accepted it. "This flag was flown over Fort Benning yesterday in honor of your gesture," the general explained. "Mr. Hawkins wanted you to have it as a symbol of gratitude. If it's all right with you, we'd like to come in for a cup of coffee." Kendra was still trying to process everything. "Oh, of course, sir. I'd be honored." The general gestured to his men to stand down and park their vehicles. As the soldiers maneuvered the tanks and trucks to the side of the street, making room for local traffic, Kendra led General Thornton and Captain Reardon inside. The diner erupted in hushed excitement and wide-eyed stares. If Kendra had been the center of attention before, she was now the eye of a hurricane of curiosity. The regulars in the diner whispered and craned their necks as Major General Thornton took a seat at the very booth where Mr. Hawkins had dined the day before. Kendra, still in a state of shock, brought him a cup of coffee. Harriet hovered near the counter, her eyes darting nervously from the uniformed men to the spectacle outside. The general took a sip. "I have to say, this coffee is better than what we get on base," he joked, trying to put everyone at ease. Captain Reardon smirked. "Not that that's difficult, sir." An anxious Harriet cleared her throat. Major General, sir, is there something else we can do for you or your men?" General Thornton shook his head politely. "Just a cup of coffee for me and Captain Reardon. Then we'll be on our way. We don't want to disrupt your business for too long." Word spread beyond the diner's doors faster than lightning. Within minutes, news crews from the local station, WMAP, started rolling up with cameras. Maplewood had never seen anything like it. Tanks in the street, soldiers at a local diner, a major general sipping coffee in a booth. A reporter and cameraman rushed in, clamoring for details. Harriet looked as though she might faint. Kendra hovered near the booth, unsure whether to stand by or retreat to the kitchen. Captain Reardon motioned for her. "Kendra, come here for a second." She approached, her heart still thrumming. "Yes, Captain?" Reardon gave a small smile. "General Thornton wants to introduce you to the press. I know it might be overwhelming, but if you're comfortable, you could share a few words about what happened with Mr. Hawkins." Kendra glanced around, the eyes of the entire diner upon her. Harriet gave a stiff nod as if to say, "This is your moment. Handle it carefully." Kendra mustered her courage and followed the general outside, where a small crowd had gathered, phones in hand, snapping pictures of the tanks. The reporter from WMAP, a young woman named Alexis Burns, hurried over. "Miss Jackson, can you tell us why the Army has come all the way to Maplewood Diner?" Alexis asked, thrusting a microphone forward. Kendra swallowed hard. "They're here. Well, because I paid for a veteran's meal yesterday. Mr. James Hawkins. I didn't think it was a big deal, honestly. He needed some help." Alexis raised her eyebrows in awe. I see. And now Major General Thornton is here to thank you in person? General Thornton stepped in, nodding. That's right. We're grateful for citizens who show respect to those who served. Mr. Hawkins told me what Kendra did. I'm in the area conducting a training exercise, so we decided to pay a visit and show our gratitude. Alexis turned back to Kendra, awe filling her face. Maplewood is certainly abuzz. Do you have any message for viewers out there about this experience? A rush of emotion flooded Kendra. She felt the weight of Harriet's warnings and the scrutiny of the diner's patrons. But she also remembered Mr. Hawkins's eyes when she told him she'd cover his meal. Eyes that finally reflected relief instead of shame. I just want to say, kindness matters, she said, voice trembling. Even if you think it's just a small gesture, you never know what someone's going through or who they are. And no matter who you are or what you have, kindness can make all the difference. The crowd broke into applause. The cameras kept rolling, capturing Kendra's tear-filled eyes as the general shook her hand. More pictures were snapped. It felt like a dream, and yet something stirred in Kendra's gut, a whisper that not all attention was good attention. The tanks left Maplewood around noon, heading back toward the highway. The swirling excitement slowly calmed, leaving the diner feeling somehow emptier by comparison. Harriet was still in shock, but she plastered on a smile. By early afternoon, a wave of new customers rolled in, people from the neighboring towns who'd caught wind of the story on social media. They wanted to eat at the diner that had tanks out front. Kendra found herself juggling more tables than ever before, flushed from the unexpected business. She also saw a few unfamiliar faces lurking at the edge of the crowd, some of them looking more curious than hungry. The Maplewood diner was trending, but not everyone liked the idea of an African-American waitress becoming a local celebrity. Maplewood had its share of prejudices, though they were often hidden beneath polite smiles. During a lull, Harriet and Kendra took a moment to catch their breath. Harriet grabbed a glass of water, wiping sweat from her brow. Well, that was something, Harriet remarked. We're going to be all over the local news tonight. Kendra nodded. It's overwhelming. Her phone buzzed in her apron pocket. Messages from friends, calls from unknown numbers. You handled it well, Harriet admitted quietly, surprising Kendra. I know we don't always see eye to eye, but I'm proud of how you represented the diner. A small smile touched Kendra's lips. Thanks, Harriet. Just then, a scrawny man in a wrinkled button-up shirt approached. He introduced himself as Robert Fields, a local blogger who covered small-town news. Kendra, can I get a picture with you? He asked excitedly. This story is blowing up. People want to know all about you. Where you live, your background, everything. Kendra hesitated, her heart clenching. She didn't want her personal life splashed across the internet, especially not details about her family's financial struggles. But Harriet, seeing a publicity opportunity, quickly agreed. We can do a quick photo near the counter if you like. As Fields prepared his camera phone, Kendra forced a smile, but alarm bells rang in her mind. Her privacy was slipping through her fingers, and she didn't know how to stop it. The photo snapped. The blogger excitedly got her to confirm the spelling of her name, and Harriet beamed, seeing potential business growth. Kendra felt a knot in her stomach. She'd wanted to help one man in need, not become a media sensation. Later that evening, after the diner closed, Kendra walked home under a cloudy sky. She was exhausted, physically and emotionally. Her phone was still buzzing, but she'd silenced it for a while, needing peace. Yet every step she took, she felt like eyes were on her. Maplewood had always been a small town, but now her face might be recognized by people outside her usual circle. She picked up her pace. Suddenly, a sleek black SUV turned the corner, its headlights reflecting in the wet asphalt. It slowed down beside her, and the window rolled down. Two men in suits stared out at her. They didn't smile. Kendra Jackson, one of them asked, a slight sneer on his lips. Kendra's heart thumped. Yes, can I help you? We'd like to talk about your interview today. Heard you're trying to get special treatment from the military. Trying to paint yourself as some hero, the driver said, voice dripping with disdain. Kendra stepped back, her stomach knotting with fear. "I'm not trying to get anything. I just paid for a meal." The passenger snorted. "Sure you did. And now you've got a general giving you flags and bringing tanks. Who do you think you are?" Anger flared within her, but fear outstripped it. She forced herself to remain calm. "I think you should leave," she said quietly. "Just remember," the driver said, his gaze cold, "some folks around here don't appreciate your type stirring up trouble." With that, the window rolled up, and the SUV sped off. Kendra stood there, heart pounding in her ears. My type was all too clear a reference. Her mind swirled with thoughts of hatred, racism, jealousy, maybe all three. She had no idea who those men were, but their message was unmistakable. Shaken, she hurried home, locked her door, and leaned against it, trying to steady her breathing. This was a side of Maplewood she'd rarely encountered so openly. Despite being aware of subtle prejudices, Kendra had seldom faced direct hostility. Now, after one grand gesture by the army, she was a target. She felt tears sting the corners of her eyes. Was doing the right thing worth all this? She replayed Mr. Hawkins's grateful face in her mind. Yes, she told herself, it had to be worth it. By Wednesday, Maplewood Diner was busier than ever. Some new customers came specifically to see the hero waitress, but there were also a handful of onlookers who did nothing but stare. Kendra could sense tension in the air, especially among certain local regulars who eyed her with suspicion. The moment Harriet turned her back, they'd whisper. Kendra tried to keep her head high, focusing on the kindness that had set all this in motion, rather than the ugliness that was rearing its head. That afternoon, halfway through Kendra's shift, a loud commotion erupted outside. She looked through the diner's large windows to see a pickup truck, its bed painted with a Confederate flag, roaring down Main Street. A handful of men stood in the bed of the truck, waving signs that read, "Stop the media circus and no military stunts here." They revved the engine near the diner, hurling insults at the building, then sped off. A hush fell inside. Harriet's face turned pale. Dear God, I never meant for any of this to happen. Kendra felt a lump in her throat. It's not your fault. They're upset about the attention. Mr. Leroy, the elderly owner, had been in his office most of the day, but he emerged just in time to witness the pickup truck fiasco. He set a hand on Kendra's shoulder. "Don't you let those fools scare you," he said softly. "You did nothing wrong." Kendra nodded, though her mind drifted back to the men in the black SUV. Worry gnawed at her. Would they come back? The following night, Kendra found herself alone in the diner after closing, wiping down tables. Harriet had left early to handle some paperwork at the bank, and Mr. Leroy had gone home, trusting Kendra to lock up. Usually, Kendra didn't mind. She enjoyed the solitude, the sense of closure as she set the chairs up for the morning shift. But tonight, every small noise set her on edge. Outside, streetlights cast long shadows across the sidewalk. She kept glancing through the windows, half expecting that black SUV to cruise by again. Finally, she decided to turn off most of the interior lights, hoping to discourage unwanted attention, and retreated behind the counter to finish the ledger. Suddenly, the front door rattled. A surge of adrenaline shot through her. The sign clearly read "closed" and the doors were locked. Whoever was trying to get in wasn't a customer. Peering carefully from behind the counter, she saw a man's silhouette. He appeared to be fiddling with the door, cursing under his breath. Trembling, Kendra reached for her phone. The silhouette then moved away from the door and disappeared from the window's line of sight. She held her breath, praying he'd leave. Seconds passed like hours. Then out of nowhere, a loud bang reverberated through the front window. She shrieked, ducking, as a crack appeared in the glass. A spiderweb pattern near the corner. Her heart hammered. Someone had thrown something. A rock, perhaps? She scrambled to her feet and dialed 911, speaking in a hushed whisper. The operator assured her that officers were on their way. Outside, she heard footsteps, and then the roar of a car engine. By the time the police arrived, the perpetrator was long gone. They found only the crack in the glass and a large rock on the sidewalk. Officer Delgado, a local policeman who'd known Kendra from high school, shook his head. "I'm sorry, Kendra. We'll file a report, but there's not much else we can do unless we have a description or a license plate." Kendra nodded shakily. "I didn't get a good look at him. He was just there." Delgado escorted her home that night, ensuring she got to her apartment safely. As she tried to sleep, she couldn't quiet the swirl of fear, confusion, and anger. The kind act that had led to a visit from the U.S. Army was now spiraling into threats and violence. It was unreal. How could a single pancake breakfast lead to all this? The next morning, Harriet nearly screamed when she saw the cracked window. "Kendra, are you okay? Why didn't you call me last night?" I didn't want to worry you," Kendra admitted. "I called the police. Officer Delgado came." Harriet pressed a hand to her mouth. "This is insanity. All over a free meal?" Kendra sighed. "It's more than that. It's about the attention. About me being black in this town. About some folks resenting the military or resent." She stopped, not wanting to say too much. Harriet's expression softened. "I'm so sorry, Kendra. We'll get this fixed right away. And I'll see if Mr. Leroy can install some cameras. We can't have this happening again." Kendra nodded, relief mixing with an undercurrent of dread. Installing cameras was a good step, but would it really deter whoever was behind the attacks? As the day progressed, the diner filled up with curious onlookers again. People from out of town wanted to see the famous diner, but the local crowd was subdued, glancing uneasily at the shattered glass taped over with a plastic sheet. Kendra did her best to maintain her usual friendly demeanor. Mid-afternoon, an unexpected visitor arrived, Mr. Hawkins himself, leaning on a cane. Kendra rushed over, helping him to a booth. "Mr. Hawkins, I'm so glad you're here," she said. "How have you been?" He gave her a small grin. "I've been better. Heard about the trouble you've been having because of me." He let out a long sigh. "I never meant for any of this to happen." Kendra waved off his concern. "You didn't do anything wrong. I just bought you some pancakes." He shook his head. "Son, you don't know half of it. I've been thinking, and I think I know who might be behind these threats. There's a group of men I used to run with after I got back from Nam. They got into some bad business, drugs, money laundering, you name it. I tried to get out. Some time ago, a couple of them ended up behind bars, and they never forgave me for testifying against their operations. They knew I was close with some high-ranking officers from my service days. They might have seen the news coverage and connected the dots." Kendra felt her blood turn to ice. "You mean they're targeting me because of you?" Mr. Hawkins nodded grimly. "And because you're black. And you helped me. They think you helped me to get to them, or that you're in cahoots with the military to spy on them. Paranoid nonsense. But those men can be dangerous." A wave of nausea rolled through Kendra. "Why don't you go to the police?" He shook his head, eyes haunted. "I've tried. There's little they can do without evidence, and these guys have friends in low places, and sometimes in high places too." Kendra's mind whirled. So it wasn't just local bigots. There was a darker undercurrent to all of this, tied to Mr. Hawkins's past. She felt the weight of it pressing down on her shoulders. "What have I gotten myself into?" she thought. Yet she couldn't resent Mr. Hawkins. He was just as much a victim, and she had chosen to help him. With newfound anxiety gnawing at her, Kendra left the diner early that evening. Harriet insisted, telling her to go home and rest. Kendra considered calling Officer Delgado to ask for an escort, but she felt that might be overkill. Instead, she hopped into her little old Honda and started the drive back to her apartment. Rain began to patter against the windshield, and the overcast sky darkened. She passed through Maplewood's empty streets, the shops shuttered for the night. As she neared a lonely stretch of road, she spotted a flicker of headlights in her rearview mirror. A pang of fear seized her. Am I being followed? She tried to remain calm, but the headlights grew closer. Her phone, resting on the passenger seat, was out of reach. Suddenly, The other car sped up, pulling alongside her. Kendra risked a glance and recognized the black SUV from before. Her heart drummed. The SUV swerved, forcing her to veer onto the shoulder. Her Honda bumped and skidded on the wet gravel. She slammed on the brakes, coming to a jolting stop. The SUV pulled in front of her, blocking the road. She froze, mind racing with terror. Two men stepped out, one wearing a baseball cap, the other in a dark leather jacket. They approached her window. Kendra locked her doors, hands trembling on the wheel. The man in the baseball cap rapped on her window. "Roll it down," he barked. She shook her head, adrenaline surging. "Where's my phone?" She spotted it, but if she reached for it, they'd see. Baseball cap glared, yanking on the door handle. "We just want to talk," leather jacket chimed in. "This can go easy or hard." Kendra's mind flashed through possible actions. Drive forward, run them over. But they might have guns. She was trapped. Finally, trembling, she cracked the window an inch. "What do you want from me?" she asked, voice shaking. Baseball cap sneered. "We want you to stop all this nonsense with the army, stop bringing them around, and stop talking to Hawkins." Leather jacket leaned closer. "He owes us big time. You think you're some hero? You're playing with fire, little girl." Kendra's fear flared into defiance. "All I did was buy him a meal." Baseball cap slammed his fist on the hood. "Don't lie. You're working with that general. You want to see us locked up or worse." Confusion welled up. "That's not true. I'm not working with anybody." Leather jacket smirked. "Then you'll walk away from this, from him, from the diner. Don't you dare talk to the press anymore, or your new army buddies, understand?" Tears of anger and fear pricked at Kendra's eyes. "I won't let you scare me." Baseball cap laughed coldly. "You're already scared, and you should be." He produced a small handgun, pointing it at the tire. Kendra's blood froze. He pressed the muzzle to the rubber and fired once, sending a deafening crack into the stormy night. The tire hissed, flattening instantly. "Next time it won't be your tire," he snarled. Kendra stifled a scream as they climbed back into the SUV and sped off, leaving her alone on the shoulder, her heart hammering and the storm soaking her car in the gloom. She fumbled for her phone, dialed 911 with shaking hands. As she waited for help, her mind whirled with Mr. Hawkins's words. "These men are serious. They won't stop until they get what they want." When the police arrived, Officer Delgado was among them, face grim. He inspected the flattened tire, the bullet hole. Kendra told him everything, from the black SUV to the confrontation. Delgado took her statement carefully, but she saw the worry in his eyes. "I'll do what I can," he reassured her. "But if these guys are part of something bigger, we might need more backup." "Like who?" Kendra asked, tears brimming. Delgado's gaze flicked over to her. "The state police, maybe the FBI if there's organized crime, but that's not up to me alone." He offered to drop her off at a friend's or at a hotel. "You shouldn't be alone tonight," he insisted. Kendra thought about her mother, who lived in a smaller town 2 hours away, too far for a quick drive in this storm. Then she remembered the phone number the general had given Harriet in case any media inquiries came in. "General Thornton," Kendra thought. "He said I could call if I ever needed help." She pulled out the worn slip of paper Harriet had given her earlier. "Emergency contact for Major General Thornton, Fort Benning HQ." It felt audacious to even consider calling a major general for personal help. But the bullet hole in her tire was testament to how dire things had become. "I'll figure it out," she finally told Delgado, accepting a ride back to her apartment. But once there, behind locked doors, she dialed the number. "IT," a soldier's voice answered, crisp and formal. Even at the late hour. Kendra explained who she was, adding, "I'm the waitress from Maplewood Diner. I have an urgent message for General Thornton, please." Within minutes, General Thornton was on the line. "Kendra, what's wrong?" She took a deep breath, recounting the events of the night. The general listened in silence. When she finished, there was a pause. "Are you safe now?" he asked, voice tight with concern. I'm home, but I don't feel safe at all, she admitted. I see, Thornton said. I'm going to make some calls. Stay inside, keep your doors locked. The folks at Fort Benning can coordinate with local authorities and see what can be done. Kendra, I promise we'll get to the bottom of this. She hung up, heart pounding yet feeling a sliver of hope. Moments later, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It read, Captain Reardon here. We have your address. A couple of officers from the base, along with local police, will keep an eye on your apartment tonight. Try to rest. Kendra exhaled shakily. At least she wasn't alone in this fight anymore. By Friday morning, Maplewood woke to another astonishing sight. A small convoy of military vehicles, including one tank, had rolled into town again. This time they parked discreetly at the edge of Maplewood, near the local police station. Word spread that they were there to assist in an unspecified joint operation. Anxiety rippled through the townsfolk, some excited to see the military presence, others resentful and fearful. Inside Maplewood Diner, the mood was tense. Harriet paced, fiddling with her apron. Kendra arrived late, having barely slept. Not long after opening, Captain Reardon and a couple of soldiers in plain clothes came in. Harriet ushered them to a private booth in the back, away from the curious patrons. Kendra joined them, nerves on edge. Reardon's face was serious. We believe the men who threatened you are connected to a local criminal network. They might have ties to bigger players. The Army can't conduct civilian law enforcement, but we can coordinate with the FBI if there's evidence these men are dealing in illegal arms or have stolen military property. Kendra blinked in surprise. Stolen military property? Reardon nodded. There's intel that some old weapons from Army bases went missing years ago. Hawkins's old associates might be involved in trafficking. We suspect they think your friendship with Hawkins, and now your connection to the general, could expose them. Kendra's mouth went dry. I just wanted to buy the man breakfast. Reardon smiled sympathetically. Kindness can have unexpected consequences, but it's not your fault. We're going to do everything we can to ensure your safety. A swirl of relief and fear mingled in her chest. Thank you, Captain. Over the next few days, Maplewood was abuzz with rumors and speculation. People noticed increased police patrols, a few soldiers around town in unmarked cars. Tension simmered beneath the surface. Kendra tried to go about her job, but fear never left her. Each day, Mr. Hawkins would drop by or call, checking on her. He felt guilty that his past was threatening her present. Finally, on a Wednesday evening, the dam broke. A group of men in 2 pickups, one with the Confederate flag, the other all blacked out, attempted to storm the diner after closing time. They smashed the plastic covering the cracked window, trying to break in. Unbeknownst to them, the FBI had set up a surveillance operation, thanks to Reardon's connections. Agents swarmed in from adjacent storefronts, local police lights flashed, and the men were caught red-handed. Guns were drawn, shots fired in the air. Kendra, huddled inside, listened to the chaos with her heart pounding in her throat. When it was over, 4 men were arrested, including the 2 who had threatened Kendra in the black SUV. The FBI confiscated illegal firearms found in the trucks. Evidence linked them to an interstate smuggling ring, with ties to corrupt individuals across several states. As the suspects were led away in cuffs, Kendra peeked through the broken window, tears of relief stinging her eyes. Captain Reardon appeared at the door moments later, panting but grinning. We got them, he said. You're safe. She burst into sobs of gratitude, hugging him. For a moment, the entire ordeal, the tanks, the threats, the media circus, felt worth it. Justice had prevailed, at least for now. In the days that followed, Maplewood seemed to breathe a collective sigh of relief. The criminals who had terrorized Kendra were facing charges that might put them away for years. The rumor mill churned, revealing that these men had been behind other acts of violence and intimidation in the region. They had sown fear in many hearts, but their downfall was triggered by one waitress's kindness and the subsequent reaction from a grateful Army general. Some locals who had snubbed Kendra or whispered behind her back realized they'd been quick to judge. Mrs. Barnsworth approached her after the lunch rush. "Kendra, dear," she said softly, "I'm sorry for any coldness I showed you. I had no idea what was really going on." Kendra smiled, wiping her hands on her apron. "It's all right, Mrs. Barnsworth. We were all in the dark." Meanwhile, Harriet, who had once been wary of Kendra's habit of helping customers in need, praised her publicly. "She's the reason the diner is still standing," Harriet told a local reporter. "She stood up for what's right." Karma also caught up with a few bigoted regulars. A small group of them, known to make off-color remarks about Kendra, found themselves ostracized by the community for siding with the criminals or for sowing hateful gossip. They slunk away in shame, forced to realize that Maplewood would not tolerate their prejudice as openly anymore. But for Kendra, the greatest vindication was knowing she had followed her heart and refused to be frightened into silence. She could walk down Main Street with her head held high, no longer looking over her shoulder. She had faced evil and won, thanks to the unlikely alliance between a humble waitress and the U.S. Army. A week later, a familiar convoy rolled into Maplewood, this time a bit quieter. General Thornton, Captain Reardon, and a few soldiers parked discreetly. No need to draw the spectacle of tanks again. They entered Maplewood Diner and found it bustling with friendly chatter. Kendra rushed over, a radiant smile on her face. "General, Captain." Thornton clasped her hand warmly. "I heard the arrests went smoothly. I'm glad to see you well." "Thanks to all of you," she replied. "I don't know how to repay your help." "You don't owe us a thing," Captain Reardon said. "But we did want to present you with something." General Thornton nodded to one of his men, who handed Kendra a small, elegantly wrapped box. Inside, she found a medal, the Army's civilian award for humanitarian service. Her eyes widened in astonishment. "It's a small token," Thornton explained. "We typically award this to civilians who go above and beyond to support our service members or demonstrate significant courage." Kendra's voice trembled. "I didn't do anything special. I just paid for a meal." "Sometimes," the general replied gently. "That's all it takes to change lives." Kendra felt tears welling up again. She stepped aside to wipe them, composing herself before returning to show Harriet. The entire diner broke into applause, and for once, Kendra let herself bask in the moment, proud of the outcome of her kindness despite all the turmoil. Over the next few weeks, the diner repaired its broken window, installed security cameras, and welcomed an influx of business. People were drawn by the story of Kendra's courageous act and the Army's dramatic response. Donations came in from across the state to help cover repairs and to support Kendra. She used a portion of the money to pay off her mother's medical bills, relief washing over her like a soothing balm. Mr. Hawkins quietly slipped out of Maplewood one day, leaving a handwritten letter of thanks for Kendra. He explained he had family in another state, and with the criminals behind bars, he hoped to start fresh. He promised to keep in touch, urging Kendra to never lose her compassion. Life settled into a new rhythm. Kendra worked her shifts, Harriet managed the diner, and Mr. Leroy oversaw business with a renewed sense of pride. The media coverage eventually died down, replaced by the next sensational headline. Yet the memory of that day, the day tanks rumbled down Main Street because a black waitress paid for a veteran's pancakes, remained an indelible part of Maplewood's history. Months passed, and Maplewood Diner hung a framed newspaper article on the wall, detailing the Army's arrival and the subsequent criminal takedown. Below it, Harriet mounted the American flag that General Thornton had gifted Kendra, still neatly folded. Patrons would sometimes pause to read the article, moved by the story behind it. Kendra continued her life with renewed confidence. She realized that helping someone in need was never just a small act. It was a ripple that extended across space and time, touching the lives of others in ways she could never predict. Her compassion had triggered a chain of events, uprooted a criminal network, and united a community under a banner of support. It hadn't been easy. She'd faced danger, prejudice, and near despair. But ultimately, kindness had won out. The day the tanks rolled up to her restaurant was the day Maplewood learned that an everyday waitress, with an open heart and unwavering courage, could inspire a movement, and that even the might of the U.S. Army would stand beside her when she did what was right. Thank you for coming along on this roller coaster journey, one that began with a single act of kindness at a humble diner and spiraled into life-threatening challenges, military interventions, and a renewed sense of hope for an entire community. Kendra's decision to pay for that veteran's meal not only sparked a chain of dramatic events, but also proved that compassion has extraordinary power. If this story touched your heart, please show your support by hitting that like button, sharing it with your friends, and subscribing to my channel. Your engagement helps spread messages of hope, bravery, and humanity across the internet. Together, we can inspire more people to choose kindness in their everyday lives. After all, you never know when a small gesture might set the stage for a life-changing moment. Thank you for watching, and remember, every act of kindness matters.